3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of the PolitiPop podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I'm your host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. Alfred Pennygirth, a.k.a. Fat Man is Throbbin', a.k.a. Thick Grayson, the Baked Crusader, Razal Cool, a.k.a. Hail Bro Mega.
Hey, and I'm Ty.
All right, nice.
I got no AKAs. I'm sorry, I didn't prepare anything.
You know, it's a classic one, and I like it. You can't go wrong with a good old Ty.
You can't. You really can't. Everyone likes a Ty.
Not at all. Now, Ty, I had prepared a few questions to ask you, but I think I'm only going to save those questions for guests. I think at this point, you are ready for a co-host position. Do you think you're ready for that?
Oh my God, I feel like Dick Grayson. Like I just got promoted.
Oh, you have no idea, okay? I couldn't do this without you. So you are hereby dubbed co-host. I am putting the virtual sword over your shoulders,
Yes.
and yeah, it's about your time, okay?
It feels good. Thank you for having me. You know, this is it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, honestly. And I guess I gotta thank COVID-19 because I don't know if this would have happened otherwise. So you know,
God, it's beautiful.
It really is. It's changing my life right now.
Tyler's on fire. Oh my God. Just because it's customary. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. I'm excited to be here and do this.
Oh, there you go. That's, same here. Despite how everything else is going, at least we still have this. So as listeners may know by reading the title of this episode, we are reviewing not a movie this time, not a TV show, which I don't think we've ever done anyway, but we are reviewing a what is this, a mini-series? Does it count as that?
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's weird. It's I mean, it's a comic book, but it's a different format than I've really seen in most comic books. It's really interesting.
Yeah, so these are maybe giant size. I don't know, a little thicker than your average comic book.
Yeah, they're definitely longer than a regular issue.
Yes, but this is a 3-part series, which was supposed to be the final work between Greg Capullo and Scott Snyder. It is known as Batman: Last Night on Earth. And before we get to it, I just want to do some housekeeping right now. Things that are going on, as some of you may or may not know, both Ty and I are on Long Island, and we've had not one, but at least 2 lockdown protests so far. How do you feel about these, Ty?
You know, I understand not wanting to be told what to do, not wanting the government to tell you what to do, but I feel like they're protesting the wrong things. You know, there's so many things that are happening in the world and have been happening, and they choose this to protest. It just feels privileged, I guess would be the word I would use. You know, that they're allowed to do this and feel like they can. I don't agree with it. I really don't.
I mean, it's blowing me away that there are so many people, not necessarily in Long Island. They haven't brought out their guns yet. I am sure it's going to happen soon.
Oh, yeah.
But
it's not an open carry state, so, I mean, you can't, right?
I don't think it is, but I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look into the laws, but, you could probably still, walk around with a shotgun or something like that, because that's impossible to conceal. Maybe. I don't know all the laws.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't think you're allowed to walk around with a weapon unless you're at a shooting range, you're hunting and have a hunting license. I don't think you're allowed to openly carry a firearm.
Well, you're not allowed to break social distancing rules and walk around other people without masks either, and yet, if you're white, you can totally do it.
But the thing is, it's not a law. It's an executive order. And that's kind of where the muddling here happens, where people are like, it's not a law, so technically I don't have to follow it.
Oh, is that the case? Okay, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that's
Because
the big argument I've heard from a lot of people. Like, oh no, it's not a law. Don't forget, it's an executive order. A lot of people are saying it's Como flexing his power and being a tyrant. I'm not a big fan of Como, but I don't agree with that either.
Well, yeah, there's this whole sentiment of like, oh, our rights are being violated and stuff, and we have the right to work and blah, blah, blah. And it just blows my mind how, like, when people's rights are actually being violated and they should take up arms and march on Washington or go to their representatives and demand a better quality of life or whatever it may be, they don't do that. It's only for stuff like this, which is blowing my mind.
It's interesting that they're willing to protest, right? Not being able to go to work, opening businesses, having to wear a mask, but they won't protest the fact that I think we're the only major, like, first world country in the planet on the planet that basically has not found a way to provide both healthcare and financial stability to our citizens, right? Like, it's pretty crazy that all these other countries have either frozen mortgages and rent payments, or providing, a certain amount of money a month to their citizens, providing free health care and covering everything. And they're not doing that. They gave us a one-time shot of $1,200, and they're contemplating doing a second one. But people aren't protesting that. They're protesting, like, let's just open the businesses back up. Let's go back to work.
Yeah, it seems pretty myopic, like the whole thing is like, oh, we have to work because, we need to make money that way. I mean, there are other people who are like, oh, I want a haircut, I want to go out, blah, blah, blah. But I do think, especially on Long Island, and, you can fight back on this, I think a lot of people right now are just desperate because their government's not taking care of them. The government mishandled a pandemic. So these people are out of work. And now they're not taking care of those people because who knows why. So these people are, they're going to go broke. There's the possibility, that eventually they might starve or whatever. And that's why people are like, oh, like, we have to go back to work. That, and of course, the president of the United States, and I shudder saying that title in reference to Trump, in reference to 45, as it were. He's the one also encouraging people to
it's weird because you have basically people who are Trump supporters who are eating up everything he says, right? So, like, he's calling, it's not a big deal, we should open back up, take this hydrochloric, whatever the hell it is, and people are eating
hydroxychloroquine.
Thank you. And you also have a group of people who are distrustful of the government in general, right? Not even people who are Trump supporters, but people who are either anti-vaccine or, anti-government and things like that, and they feel it's a conspiracy. And I think a lot of this boils down to the fact that, our government has fucked us over so many times that people are distrustful of them, and I get that. And the second is there have been so many contradicting pieces of information that have come out from our government, from the United States in regards to this pandemic. Supposedly Dr. Fauci was on 60 Minutes in March talking about how masks won't help. Okay? And
really?
You fast forward 2 months later. Yeah, I mean, apparently there's a clip out there. I haven't watched it, but a lot of people I know have. Supposedly saying, the masks don't really help. A lot of people in China are wearing them, but in the end, it won't stop the virus from going through it. You fast forward 2 months, and now we're being told we have to wear masks, or like it's the best thing to do. And so when you get that kind of contradicting information, I think it makes people feel like there's an ulterior motive, and that's a tough spot to be in.
You know what I think would be great? There's this piece of information going around. I really think you should look into it, actually. It's this video called Plandemic. Have you heard of it?
Plandemic? I've never heard of this.
Oh my God, dude. It sheds light on everything. And I don't know. I haven't fucking watched it. It's already been debunked so many times, but people are willing to believe anything. Especially...
Well, she doesn't cite anything in it, right? That's like the big issue. It's like, okay, if you really have information that contradicts what we're being told, that's great. More information's great. But like, she literally just goes on a spiel telling you about all the things that are wrong, that you're being lied to about. She doesn't provide any kind of documentation or citation of any actual scientific facts. and she's a disgraced scientist, right? She was actually fired for, I think, faking something, and she also stole from her lab. Like it's like a whole thing, and it's like I think
And hid on a houseboat.
Yeah, she hid on a houseboat trying to avoid persecution of
like real scientists should. Hell yeah.
I'm just like, I've heard so many people that I really admire and I think are very intelligent be like, have you heard, have you watched the video? Like she's debunking everything. And it's like, no, like that's not the answer. Like just listening to someone, I could get up here and talk about whatever I want and tell you that it's science. And if you believe me, then that's just crazy, right?
Well, it's like you said, more information is good, but misinformation is what's deadly.
Yeah, and that seems to be the theme, I guess, of this whole situation. And I guess a lot of that has to do with technology in the world we currently live in. It's a lot easier to spread that stuff. I mean, how many times you can make a Facebook post, right? You could put a meme up there, and people will spread it around and believe it's fact.
Yeah, and I've actually taken to now looking through the information that these memes claim to purport, because it may be something that supports my point of view, but then I'll actually look into it and see whether or not it's true, because at this point, it doesn't matter what side it's on. I say very loosely in quotes, but misinformation just isn't right.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, all it takes sometimes is a quick Google search.
That's all I do. It is a quick Google
right?
search.
You just throw in the main theme or idea of the meme, and you quickly find out if it's false or not. And I feel like nobody takes the time to do that.
And the worst part about it is that people have already done the work. All you have to do is put in the keywords.
I know.
And
I'm
see.
come on. We have a computer at our fingertips at all times, right? Like a phone is a computer now. And you're on Facebook or wherever. Just take 2 seconds and search it before you post it.
Man, last part of the whole lockdown thing is here on Long Island, we have a local news station, News 12, which you and I were talking about off mic. For the most part, is pretty even-handed in its information. Like I said, I do think that anytime there's a crime committed by a Hispanic person, they are on top of it. But
I mean, I think they're just looking for a story because they're very, very local news, and it's
very local.
Usually they're posting about some bullshit nobody cares about. So it's when they can actually talk about something crazy happening. I think they're like, fuck yeah, let's get on that.
Absolutely. And when the most recent protest happened, news anchor Kevin Vesey, he went there. And people were breaking social distancing, not wearing masks, getting up in his face, verbally assaulting him, almost physically accosting him. And he posted this video about it, and 45 retweeted it and was like, fake news is not essential, blah, blah, blah. This reminds me, I'm not sure if you ever saw it, the episode of South Park where Mr. Garrison is the Trump character and he's going back and forth with North Korea about tweak. A random, no. And he's like, oh, North Korea, tweak isn't scared of you, and North Korea is sending missiles over Tweak's house and everything. Tweak is losing his mind over it. It's just like that. It's why the fuck do you care about News 12, bro? You're the president
my
of the
question
United
is
States.
Does he really believe it, or is he just so dumb that he thinks it's really fake, or he just wants to commit to his narrative? I don't know. I go back and forth. I'm like, is he doing this on purpose? Does he not really know what he's doing? It's hard to tell.
It really is tough to tell because he's really doubled down on this whole the media lies thing. But I don't know. It is just deadly. He's following all of the steps in the rule book to become a fascist leader. And, discrediting the media is part of it. But then also, riling up his base, people who don't know any better. And we'll get into that later in the story because that's kind of part of what happens in Last Night on Earth. But, I don't. That's deadly. It's deadly.
I'm a manager for, a grocery store, and
the grocery store.
Well, maybe, yeah. Many may say that. But in the last 2 weeks, especially, I've noticed a shift in people's attitudes. Early on it was a lot of like, thank you so much for your service, like thanks for being on the front lines.
Oh my God,
more
the front line
a lot less of that rather, and a lot more like just fucking angry people. I think people are just sick of being home. They're like ready to come out of their house. They don't want to wait on lines at the grocery store. They just want to fucking go about their business. Like I had a situation with a woman who wouldn't wear a mask and a gentleman who kept getting in her face because of it. They were going back and forth outside before they even got into the building.
Wow.
Because we can't do anything while they're outside. Once they're in the building, they're required to wear it. When they come inside, they're just going back and forth harassing each other. The woman tells me she's calling the police if I don't stop him. Then it turns out he's a police officer. He whips out a badge and tries to like intimidate me into like backing down. And like I'm just
this is insane.
What the fuck? I'm like, well, I'm gonna call the police on both of you if you don't just fucking shop for your groceries and go out. Like I'm like, why am I better at like de-escalating this situation than a trained police officer? That's what blew my mind, first of all. But like
seriously,
I'm just like, why am I the one doing this? But like I've just noticed like people have been like, we have a guy who's been coming who won't wear a mask, claims it's medical, but he's also claiming it's because he's Jewish. I don't know. Like I don't know if he's saying like it's like a Nazi thing that we can't ask for like medical paperwork. It's unbelievable, man. People are just fucking losing their minds, and especially people who are Trump supporters, I think are just like, they're like, fuck this, we're going to do what we want, you can't stop us.
I don't know. It's, it really just doesn't make any sense to me on the outside. But I don't know. People are easily swayed, and we'll go into the whole idea of the true nature of humankind later in this story, because comic books get deep.
Yeah, people don't realize that.
Next bit of business. So last episode we did was the overrated podcast for Empire Strikes Back. How did you think that went?
I actually wasn't on that one. It was my counterpart, Kyle Chanel. He said of course,
that's right.
He said it was pretty fun. He enjoyed bashing Empire Strikes Back. Yeah,
I definitely want to do another episode like that. I mean, I want to do as many more of those as we can, because like I said previously, it's a good palate cleanser for us. We just go off and say ridiculous stuff. I don't think my character, the Booch, is too problematic. I think that the way I made him out is is problematic. I used trade school as a fucking punchline, where it's a legitimate path to a career, and I think there is a storyline to go through with him though. How
it seems like he's in denial of his true self.
Yeah, I think he has a history with. I know he has a history with abuse, which I really dialed into and trivialized. So we'll see how the reception goes from our 7.5 listeners. But.
That half a person counts, though. Okay.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Or maybe it's just the person who listened halfway through and was like, "Fuck this."
And for me, Kyle Chanel, obviously, I'm kind of at least I used to be a very big film snob, but I think I try to be less of a douchebag than that. So I want to take it up a notch and be one of those guys who just fucking judges everything about the movie and wants to make it, a David Lynch film for no reason.
Yeah, I think we have some stuff to learn, but I think we'll hit our stride. I definitely want to do a few more episodes, and if you are one of our 7.5 listeners, feel free to let us know through all the contact information we have. Most likely, if you're listening, it's because I know you personally, so just shoot me a text or something and let me know what you thought.
Give us some feedback of our characters, of the whole thing, Maybe give us some ideas.
Yeah, because I have no problem exploring why the Booch is a toxic bro, and how he feels like he has to compensate for what he thinks is lost masculinity or whatever. But there's specific ways to do things. Speaking of specific ways to do things, let's talk about the ways in which these creators tell the story of Batman. Do you want to start off with the creators or start off with the plot?
Oh, let's talk a little bit about the creators and their history with Batman and each other.
Awesome. So yeah, Last Night on Earth is a collaboration between multiple people. There's also Jonathan Glapion
Yep.
and FCO Placencia, who are, no one person one person can make a comic book, but it is amazing to see just how many different hands go into making it what it is as a finished project. Glapion is an amazing inker. Placentia has beautiful colors in what is arguably one of the darkest Batman stories of all time, and yet it still really stands out. It's so vibrant.
Yeah, I think once you realize like how much goes into a comic book, we've been reading comics for a very long time, and I remember early years of reading them and going to cons and stuff, and thinking like it's just the artist and the writer, and then like you would meet an inker and you'd see what they did on a certain project, and it's like wow, they brought it to the next level, like it was good, but they made it great.
Yeah, I mean that they're really the unsung heroes. And then of course, let me just go into there's also Tom Napolitano. He was their letterer. That's a whole thing. Like, unless you're really into comics, and you and I are really into comics, but I don't think that much that it's like, yo, who's your favorite letterer, bro? You know?
Yeah, but if you look at the cover, right, for like Last Night on Earth issue 1, and first of all, the cover's incredible. I think it's amazing. I love it. It's one of my favorite covers. Even like the lettering on the title and everything is just so cool. Like it's so unique and it just really works.
Yeah, it's got the right amount of grit. I think lettering is one of those things that it's so important, like, but you don't notice if it's bad until it is.
Yeah, it's
Like
true.
if the job is done well, then you don't notice. It's one of those things.
I think it's like, I guess that's the way it's supposed to be, right? It's like seamless. Like you just get into it. You're like, all right, here we go. Like rather than be like, wow, this really stands out because I'm used to such shitty like lettering or comic books, but most modern comics, especially, like you really can, you can see it and when you get a bad one more than a good one. I think.
Yeah, so now to the two very well sung heroes who I don't think their praises can be sang or sung enough. Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, they are a super team who have been working on Batman since what, 2010, 2009? It's been a
I
while.
think so. Yeah, it was the New 52 that they started working on Batman when they kind of rebooted everything.
Yeah, and Batman was really one of the standout titles of the New 52 line, and I didn't really have any idea who these people were beforehand. Greg Capullo, he lives, and I'm not sure if he still does, but he had lived out in Schenectady, upstate New York, not classically trained artist, and he'd worked on Spawn for a while. He's very close friends with Todd McFarlane. And, he was being put on a mainstream book like Batman. A lot of people didn't like it because they thought he was going to make it too exaggerated and make him look like, Spawn and everything like that. And then you have Scott Snyder, who is a Long Island native. And,
Yep.
I know Billy Joel comes from Long Island, and, you have Mariah Carey and Ralph Macchio. Like, you have a lot of Long Island celebrities, but none of them are like make me proud to be like, yo, I'm from Long Island, bro. But Scott Snyder really does.
Well, like I've had the pleasure of meeting him several times, and every time I've met him, he actually goes to one of our local comic book stores a lot.
A lot.
He signs for free, almost
Yep.
every time, and he's just such a nice guy and like a fan. Like he's a fan of comic books. I remember I met him years and years ago when he was working on Swamp Thing, and he was like, "Yo, you want to see like some stuff from the next issue?" Because I was telling him how much I was enjoying it, how he got me into Swamp Thing for the first time. And he like whips out like the next issue that's not even out yet, and starts like showing me images from it. And I'm like, holy shit, this is really happening. And like he's known to do that. Like a coworker of mine, he showed like stuff from Batman, like Dark Knight Metal. Like he's just like a super fan who likes meeting fans, and just like really pleasant person.
And it's incredible how like you think of all of the most integral parts of Batman's story throughout the years, and who they came from. You have obviously your Bob Kane and Bill Finger at the beginning of the lore, and then you have like Denny O'Neil added a lot of stuff, and a variety of, your Chuck Dixon with Bane and everything. Like, you have a lot of writers. I can't name them all, but Scott Snyder, in the short time I think he's been working on Batman, has added so much to the lore already that wasn't there previously. It's incredible.
Yeah, his run's iconic now. It's probably considered one of the best runs on Batman. I think he understands the character of Batman better than most other writers. Tom King, for example, took over after him on the regular Batman series.
Oh, here we go.
Sorry, I just don't think he understands Batman or Bruce Wayne the way that Scott Snyder does. Like, he just writes him. Not. It's like he knows who he is inside and out. When I read a Scott Snyder Batman comic, that's Batman to me. Every time. I'm never like, oh man, he messed it. Like, no, like, even if the story's not my favorite, Batman is always right on for me. And he's great at writing Dick Grayson. He was one of the people who wrote Dick Grayson as Batman in Batman the Black Mirror.
Yeah, and I think he did did he do Gates of Gotham before or after Black Mirror?
I think it was before.
I think it might have been.
Yeah.
But that was like his standout like comic. That was his entry into Batman, I think.
Yep. Like, he just knows the universe. He knows the characters. Like, he's a really, really good writer. His run on Swamp Thing was fantastic. He's done American Vampire with Stephen King. Like, he's done a lot of creator-owned stuff, and like, it's just always great. Yeah, Witches he took from like a personal story of like something that really scared him as a kid and made it into this fantastic horror comic, and like, he just gives his all, and I think he's got to be one of the best writers in comics today by far.
I 100% agree. You had like the Court of Owls, right, have made their way into the Gotham show, the Joker without the face and then putting the face back on, like in Texas Chainsaw. That made it into Gotham.
Court of Owls is iconic, man. Like, I feel like it's so good. It's so well written, so interesting. He really and that was like his. I think that was the first arc, right, of his Batman run. Like,
that was the first arc of his Bruce Wayne That was the first arc of the New 52. Yeah. Yeah,
that's like home run right out of the gates, and he just kept it going.
And then recently you have Dark Knight's Metal, with the Batman Who Laughs. He made up all of those different, Dark Knights from the other universes. And it's just amazing that this stuff came from this person's head, made it into the lore. That, DC, which is distributed worldwide, Batman, which is distributed worldwide, has all of these ideas throughout it, and it came from some fucking guy from Long Island.
Yeah,
how incredible is that?
Duke, Harper Rill, like, he's made all these characters that,
that's
maybe
right.
They're not the most important character in Batman's story, but they're sticking around. Like, people, they're recognizable. They're going to be in the lore. That's pretty incredible. These are people that are hanging out with Dick Grayson and Tim Drake. So it's pretty incredible. This, like you said, this guy from Long Island was able to do this. And to me, like, he's the Batman writer right now.
Yeah. And even with those characters, like when Sean Murphy did White Knight and Curse of the White Knight, his own Batman story, which collects from multiple parts of the canon while not adhering to any one of them, he puts Scott Snyder's characters into that story. Like, I think that shows that Scott's version of Batman is pretty essential.
Yeah, by far. I think, New 52 occurred in 2011. And I think, everything that he's done on there, it's going to be the recommended Batman book for new readers. It's stuff that people are not going to forget anytime soon by far.
Hopefully not. I want to close off on just talking about that by mentioning, because you said, he comes to one of our local comic book stores all the time, and I feel kind of like we have that privilege, because when we've been at New York Comic Con, when I've been there, I was going to get Scott's autograph, right? I was going to get Scott's autograph alongside Greg Capullo, who was the one who I haven't ever met before, but I really love his work, his art. There are people who are like, oh, I traveled from Ohio, or I traveled from this place to meet Scott Snyder because of his writing, blah, blah, blah. Is this your first time meeting? And I'm like, oh, like, I've actually kind of run out of stuff for him to sign at this point because I met him so much.
It's crazy. Like, my coworker always goes to his signings at our comic book store. And, like, he would always get, like, what do you want from me? Like, if I couldn't make it, he's like, what do you want? What do you want me to get signed for you? Like, there was a point where I'm like, dude, I got nothing. I'm like, whatever. Like, if you get me something, you get me something. He's like, oh, I get this cool poster or something. All right, cool. I'll add it to the collection. It's like, thanks.
I mean, I have, like, different comics on display in my, little cove creative area. And I do have a couple that are signed by Scott, but I was looking in my long box yesterday, and I realized I have Scott signed comics in my long box too, because I just didn't have a place to display them. I just have so many at this point.
I actually got both of us the first issue of his Batman run, and I think I had it personalized, right, to each of us.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I guess that's
cool.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was around the time of my birthday too, and I was like, "Oh, cool, whatever," because I didn't even collect single issues at that point yet. So I let that thing take a beating. It was signed to me by Scott Snyder. I think it graded it at an 8.6, which isn't terrible.
That's actually not bad.
Yeah, it probably should have been lower, but yeah. So thank you for that. Thanks for introducing me to Scott and Capullo. Currently I think they're working on one more quote unquote last story together, which is like, I think it follows that metal storyline. I think it's called Death Metal.
Yeah, they weren't. I don't think they were supposed to, but it was so successful that they're doing the sequel now. Apparently, DC is pulling out all the stops. Like, anyone that's ever approached the DC universe is going to appear at some point in this comic. It's going to be pretty intense.
And it's definitely in the right hands. We see in this comic there's a lot of Scott using the lore like throughout the entire DC universe. He's bringing up references and characters that I either haven't thought about in a long time or still don't even know what he's talking about, believe it or not.
Yeah, I mean, and it's pretty cool that he can write like a very personal, like character driven moment or story, but then also do some fucking crazy shit like Dark Knight's Metal, where they're talking about like all this interdimensional stuff, and I'm like, I don't even know what's happening, but it's cool.
Yeah, and I actually did speak to him on Twitter. That's another thing. His messages are always open, and if he can get to you, he will. But I spoke to him on Twitter once, and I was just like, hey, is it mandatory to read the companion issues for Dark Knight's Metal, like off of the main storyline? Because there were all these individual stories that were done about each of the Dark Knights from the other universes, and he was like, no, you don't have to. I didn't want to make that kind of story where you have to, but it's extra. And honestly, I kind of like those stories just a smidge more than I like the main one. They were so great.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff there.
Yeah, which, I mean, he didn't write everyone specifically either, but, he came up with the original idea and origins, I assume, and was just like, all right, go for it, make a comic about this alternate Batman. All right, so let's move forward to Last Night on Earth, which, you know what, Ty? Give him the plot.
20 years in the future, Bruce Wayne wakes up in Arkham Asylum. Young, sane, and he's never been Batman. To piece together the mystery of his past, the Dark Knight embarks on a sprawling quest through this unknown world, meeting futuristic versions of former friends and enemies, including a grisly traveling companion, the Joker's head. Somehow still alive, Joker's decapitated head becomes Batman's ghoulish guide to the landscape of the devastated DC universe. But to unravel the cause of this terrible future, they need to track down the unspeakable force that destroyed the world he once knew. This could be the last Batman story ever told.
As we find out, they all could be, and they all end up not
every
being.
time. I mean, they were really pushing this as like their final work, which it doesn't look like it's going to be. But yeah, it would have been pretty cool if it was.
To quote every commercial that's come out during lockdown, during COVID, now more than ever, in these uncertain times, we need Batman stories by Snyder, Capullo, Glapion, and whoever else wants to jump on. If Snyder's at the helm, then that's the way to go about it. Seriously, they can keep putting out as many stories as they want, and I will read as many as I can.
Yeah, I think everyone will. And I think that's what happened to Tom King, was people were so excited by Scott Snyder stuff, it kind of hurt his run a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that, because Snyder, he didn't stop writing,
Yeah, he's there.
let's do this, man. Feel free to stop me wherever you want, but I'm just gonna go through the parts that I noted. By the way, I know I mentioned it to you off mic. There's a lot more in this book that pertains to our social and political climate than I originally gave it credit for when I first read it, because that's another thing that Snyder is really good at. I think he harkens back to that original comic writing style of, yes, there is social commentary if you want it, like if you look for it, but even if you don't, it's just a good story.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the focus of the story, but it's definitely there. And I agree. I think the first time I read this, I enjoyed it, but like I didn't really get much out of it beyond just like, oh, it was a cool story. And I don't know if that's because I read it, in increments as they were being released, but like reading it all together in one shot, the story definitely comes together, and there's a lot of great stuff to take apart.
So let's start taking things apart. As you mentioned in the plot synopsis, there's at the beginning, Bruce wakes up in the asylum, and he's been led to believe that the entire Batman story is actually a fantasy that he's had in his head, and that he is insane.
Yeah, and all the villains are different doctors and people that work at the hospital, and Alfred's been trying to get him help so that he can come back and be sane again. He finally now is woken up after all these years, and they're like, all right, we can finally tell you the truth. That none of this actually happened.
And the one thing that did happen was that his parents did die, but he's the one that killed them somehow.
Which is so messed up, right? Because this, the thing is, he refuses to believe this. He's like, no, it's not true. I don't believe this for a second. Alfred tries to show him what his bat suit is, and it's just a straitjacket with like a bat cowl on it. And
I love this. Oh, I love this movie.
It's cool.
Well, it was the electroshock harness for
that's
his
right.
head,
That's right.
Yeah.
And so he's like, look, this is your suit, and Bruce is like, oh, like let me see it. He's like, I'm gonna need that back because he's still Batman. He's still Batman. You can't take that away from him. That's who he is. So he decides to put on this really like shitty outfit, and he fights his way through floor after floor of this insane asylum. And like they keep sending people to talk him out of it. Harvey Bullock, he takes him down. I think Commissioner Gordon, he takes him down. Like he's just like knocking them all down, trying to get to the top because he's like, this isn't real.
And as he's doing it, he's constructing his suit at the same time. Like he's taking down a cop. Boom, I have your nightstick now. He has Bullock's belt, and that's his utility belt. And now he has, he has gloves. He has combat boots and everything. And like by the time he gets to the top of the asylum, the top floor, like he's Batman again.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then there's the reveal that Alfred is lying to him. That this isn't a real scenario. It's like a computer generated program, I guess. It's like the Matrix, right? And like he's living in it, trying to convince him that this is the real world, because I guess the real world isn't there anymore. And Alfred doesn't want him to be in pain. He wants him to just like let it go and stop being Batman. But of course, Batman, Bruce Wayne is Batman, and he can never stop being him. But I do want to note, like, it's really fucked up that Alfred told him that he's the one that killed his own parents.
Why is that the thing? This'll make him stay. If I told him he killed his parents,
I know. I'm like, God damn, Alfred! Like that was so savage, dude. Like of all the things to tell this guy, this is what you say.
I don't know. You just think he would have tried to make a more peaceful environment for him if he wanted Bruce to stay.
Yeah, it would have been way more realistic. He's like, yeah, your parents were murdered. They caught the guy, but you were just so fucked up from it that you couldn't recover. But he's like, nah, you did it. You killed them. It's like, what?
Now, this whole thing here, I didn't really look into it, the first time, but this kind of reminds me of what it's like to be gaslighted. You see that there's a problem somewhere, you see that something's not right, and it's kind of where we are, right? Like we're trying to talk about how broken the system is, and in the time of COVID, how there are certain things we should be following, certain guidelines. But there are people who just continually tell us like, oh, you're being too emotional. That's not true. You sound crazy. It's not that big of a deal. We had the swine flu. We had the avian flu. We had SARS. Like it's all just bullshit. It's overblown bullshit. And I think credit where credit's due to Batman for sticking it out and being like, no, I know for a fact that my mindset, my reality is correct and yours isn't.
Yeah, it's the one thing about Batman. He always kind of sticks to his guns, so to speak. Like he never backs down. You can't convince him otherwise. And I think that's why, like in so many different comics and scenarios, you always see him. He's always Batman. No matter what situation you put him in, he's gonna find a way to prove himself correct and find a way out of it. And this is no exception.
Even in Grant Morrison's Batman stories, there's a moment where the bad guys kidnap Batman, get him hooked on heroin, and put him in a homeless tent city, and he loses his memory and still becomes Batman at the end of it.
Batman. Or he travels through time with no memories. He's in the caveman era. He becomes Batman. He's just Batman. He's more Batman than he is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, and we see in this story, I think the one thing he holds on to, like in Grant Morrison's, it's the Zur-En-Arrh, which dates back to like a Batman saga in the 50s. But as long as Batman remembers that phrase, he will always find a way to become Batman. That's what he holds on to. In this, Batman finds a penny in his cell, and when he finally convinces Alfred, like, hey man, sorry, I have to go. You know who I am. I can't just know that the world is gone and let it be that way. I have to go out. And Alfred's like, you're right. Take this penny with you. That's kind of like his, remember who you are at all times. And it comes back later on. Once again, I didn't realize that Alfred was the one who let him keep the penny, and how it actually keeps coming up in the story. The first time I went through, I only realized it in the beginning and the end of the story. I didn't realize it keeps coming up.
Yeah, it's a common theme throughout this penny and how it keeps him grounded, I guess, as Batman.
Another thing I should mention real quick is that at the supposed end of one of Snyder's Batman runs, he makes it canon that Batman made a machine that would reproduce a Bruce Wayne for every generation. So if the Batman before him died, he believes the world always needs a Batman. So there's a machine that will make a biological clone of him in his prime. So he's not. So this story takes place 20 years in the future. This Batman is 20 years younger than everybody else.
Yeah, Scott Snyder, I feel like, has an obsession with making him young again. He just keeps doing it. He's like, Batman's he's not old, he doesn't have any scars, he's young, and he's in his prime. Like that, and having Batman team up with the Joker, I feel like, is something that he really likes him to do too.
He does, yeah. I mean, he really ships those two, and he loves the Joker-Batman dynamic, as we see in this story as well. Maybe that's why he didn't really put Damian into any of his stories either. Like, that was a big thing that's why Morrison killed Damian at the end of his run, because he didn't want to date Batman or age him.
Yeah, yep.
And, of course, at the end of this ruse, we find out that Alfred is actually much older than he's letting on. And, we see this generational theme that we keep bringing up in all of our podcasts together, is that Alfred is older and he thinks he knows better, but it turns out that in the end he's just scared to lose whatever he had. He really wants to hold on to his piece of the old world.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce is his son, more or less, and he wants to keep him safe. He wants to keep him with him. He doesn't want to lose him again.
Yes, because we do find out later on that the reason this Batman exists is because the original Batman is gone and he's lost. Yeah,
he died in the very, very early moments of this, apocalypse, so to speak.
So he takes the penny, which we'll go back to at the end of the story. But Batman sets out on his own and finds the Joker head in a jar. and takes that with him as his traveling companion. And this is very much like the Batman version of Old Man Logan, if any of you have ever read that.
Definitely.
We're doing one last job, venturing across the apocalyptic wasteland in order to get to our goal, and everything we knew is a little bit different. It's kind of turned on its head.
They never really explain how Joker's alive, but he does bring some really welcome comic relief, I think. Like, there's some genuinely funny moments with him, and this is a DC Black Label comic, and so he's like allowed to curse, and like there's just some funny moments that he has.
Everyone's allowed to curse.
Pretty much. So he kind of breaks up the tension a lot with these ridiculous Joker moments.
It's so good. The whole time he's like, "Oh, like, can I be Robin now?"
It's so funny.
He's just continuing. And we do see at the beginning there's this narration in the story, and this guy who's narrating it, he's talking about how this was Batman's most important case. I've been with him since the beginning, and let me tell you how it went down. You think it's Alfred, but it turns out that Joker's actually narrating the entire thing.
Yeah, it's all Joker talking about this entire story. Yeah, and then there's that opening story, which keeps coming back in each of the 3 volumes. There's a piece of it where it's like Batman's biggest case, right? Like, he finds a kid in crime alley, and it turns out it's Joe Chill's son, and like that whole narrative is happening right before you get back into, this futuristic world.
It does happen.
It does, yeah. I was really unclear about it the first time I read through this, but obviously rereading it makes a lot more sense why it's happening.
Oh, good. So maybe you can shed light on that for me at the end, because I wasn't exactly sure how, I see the story itself progress, but other than the line of chalk, which they bring back at the very end, I was kind of a little lost on that as well.
Okay.
Meanwhile, we're still in the beginning of the story. Like I said, there's stuff you can look into if you want. The Green Lantern babies that we find, throughout, the wasteland. They're just we find out that during whatever epic battles happened following the fall of the world, that Mogo, who was the Green Lantern planet responsible for dispatching rings when Green Lanterns die, we find out that it was destroyed and crashed, and that there were just a bunch of Green Lantern rings left everywhere, and the people who are wearing them don't have the willpower to wield all this power, so they're just kind of slaves to the ring, and the ring is conjuring up these huge, Titanic-looking babies that can't be controlled, with these human bodies hanging from them, and it's such a fun visual.
Yeah, it really is. It's a really fun, exciting moment. It's it's pretty over the top, but it's cool, and then it allows him to be introduced to these survivors that rescue him. Including Poison Ivy and some other recognizable faces, which leads to the big one, which is Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's alive. She's obviously been battle scarred and damaged.
She's rocking this mohawk.
I mean, she's so badass. But
yeah, she absolutely is. She has Dr. Fate's helmet, which has no magic anymore. She's just wearing it as a helmet at this point.
And she's guarding, what could be the last humans left on Earth, with free will. And she kind of breaks down a lot of what's happened to this Batman, explaining to him, how he's, he's obviously not the same Batman because that one died, right? When this all started.
Yeah, so what we kind of find out in the first issue is that Lex Luthor was on, national, if not international TV, and made this case for why humans, regular people, not metahumans, should revolt. We learn more about it in issue 2, but the basis that Wonder Woman gives us is he made this argument for we shouldn't let people in masks control our lives. And so people kind of took that to heart and, through sheer numbers alone, started overthrowing not just the villains, but also the heroes. And
it started with the heroes, and then they turn on the villains later.
Yeah, that's right. So it started with the heroes, then they went to the villains, which Lex didn't expect at all. And we find out that when it came to the Hall of Justice, and everybody, all the heroes were in there trying to save their own lives and close the doors, Batman was the one who let them in.
Yeah, he opened the door. I think he believed that in the end they would do the right thing, right? Like he believed in the people, so he wanted to show them he wasn't scared and he believed in them, so he held the doors open. And they fucking butchered him. They massacred him, and a lot of the other heroes, including I think not Green Lantern, Green Arrow, Black Canary, and some others.
Oh yeah, they go into that. I really wish like he had more space to tell these stories, because we see the aftermath and it's like, oh wow, I wish I could have seen the actual battles.
I would have loved,
happened.
like, honestly, like an 8 to 10 part series where he could have like really like showed us like maybe flashbacks to that. You're like, we'll get into it more, but I think the last issue of this is a little rushed. I think it could have had a little more space
Yeah, I could see that,
to show what was happening.
I don't know if it really matters, but I made a point in my notes to mention that the Green Lantern babies reminded me of Wall Street, because it's just like a bunch of man children who have so much power yet are completely immature and emotionally stunted individuals.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I don't think Snyder meant it that way at all, but I just thought that was a fun fun comparison to make.
I'm sure it was something.
So yeah, and here, you mentioned before, like, Snyder knows Batman really well, and he does. This reminds me of that Justice League episode where they finished up the Batman Beyond storyline, and Waller is talking to an older Terry McGinnis, and she's telling him the story of Batman that really changed her mind on him as a hero, and she says, I've never met anybody who cares more about his fellow man than Bruce Wayne. And that's illustrated here. Even when the world was losing its mind, Batman still, because he is one of them, right? He is, at his core, a human being, and that's what separates him from a good majority of the Justice League.
Yeah, he has no powers. He's just a guy in a bat suit. Yeah, so I mean, this scene, we find all this out, and then Wonder Woman's plan is to lead all these survivors into Hades, right?
Yeah, her plan is to leave, and Batman's really not about it, because this version of Batman didn't see how things got so bad. He's just like, this whole time, he says, like, we gotta stay and fight. Every time he meets someone new, we gotta fight. And everyone's like, no, like, we already did fight. You missed the fight, dude.
Yeah, the fight's over.
Yeah, right now we're just trying to survive. And, kind of brings up, like, discussions I've been having with Dee, my fiance, recently. How she's like, oh, I'm nervous about, my working situation after all this is over, if it's over. And, and I'm telling her, I'm like, I think things are going to continue to get worse. Like, I'm of the Wonder Woman mindset. I'm like, as soon as we can, let's get the fuck out of the country. Like, she wouldn't do it because she still has family here. But, like, we've seen right now that our country does not care about us as working folk. That they did not take care of us as much as other, you mentioned before, other countries are doing mortgage freezes and, and making up for lost pay because of this pandemic.
But it might be too late to get out. Like, I don't know if they're going to want us. Like, who's going to want the Americans who didn't know how to handle this situation?
Hopefully Canada. But the... but, like, for example, the beaches are going to be open this weekend for Memorial Day, dude.
I think they said they're not now. I think they changed it, but I could be wrong.
Well, not all of the beaches, but I mean, I watched News 12 this afternoon.
Oh, really?
I mean, things could have changed since then. Things are constantly updating in the news cycle. But yeah, there's like one beach in Nassau County, 2 beaches in Suffolk County, which, I really don't think it's a good idea. I know people want to try and get things back to normal as soon as possible, but there's no way they're going to maintain, like, oh, we're only going to be at 50% capacity. Go to a fucking supermarket and see how many people maintain social distancing, when they're supposed to.
It's true.
Yeah, they want to come at it with the Batman point of view that people will do the right thing, and I'm at the Wonder Woman point of view. I've seen it right in front. Like, people don't have a problem getting close to you if you're looking at the eggs, to get their own eggs instead of just waiting. Like, is the answer just leaving? Because like the common people like you and I, And I know this really sucks to say, are we going to make a difference? Aside from going to the polls and voting however we're going to vote, are we really going to, fundamentally change this country at this point in our lives?
Our votes don't matter anyway. So honestly, no, we're not.
All right, so you're also Wonder Woman.
I'm Omega, man.
Omega Man is in Charlton Heston, or you are Omega, Man?
Omega, man. But Charlton Heston was cool.
And the last thing I noted in issue 1 was that Wonder Woman tells Batman, she says the world doesn't want saving.
Yeah, like this is the fate they chose, right? Like this is what they wanted. They have it. She tells him, you can still save lives, but not by going out there and fighting, and by coming with me and protecting the people that are here that want saving. I think she gives him his batsuit.
Yeah, she says the world out there, it doesn't want saving. Maybe it never did. And that really resonated. Like we see people who are constantly voting against their own interests and acting against their own interests too.
Every day, every single day.
Every day. And it's like, maybe they don't want saving. That's
we've talked in great detail, I think, on the podcast and, outside of it about, the political climate and the fact that it's Joe Biden against Donald Trump in the election, right? And how it's the worst fucking candidates you could ever have going against each other. And when there's so many other options that could have been there, including, Bernie Sanders, who was obviously much, much better. And it's like, this is what the people want though, right? Like this is what they've chosen. The DNC has picked Joe Biden. People want Trump, and there's so many Democrats that want to vote for Biden. Like we've talked about, like, all right, fine, we're not going to vote. We're not going to take part in this. You chose this future, let you have it. And, it kind of goes back to what she says in here. And it's like, maybe people don't want to be saved. This is the future they want.
Well, it harkens back to that, to that little monologue the Joker has in The Dark Knight. He talks about how bad the plan is, but people still, I think I mentioned this in the previous podcast too, how bad the plan is, but people still want it because it's better than the unknown. It's all part of the plan. Even if the plan is horrifying, it's still more comfortable.
Yeah, they don't want things to fundamentally change, right? People are afraid of change.
Yeah, my plan is to just, write in Bernie Sanders. That's going to be what I do. And
Yep, same.
And that's it. But, but people have shown, I showed in the last election that I am willing to play by the rules that are set out before me. They stole the election from Bernie, and I was like, all right, I'll vote Hillary just to keep Trump out of office. Guess what? That didn't work. So why am I going to do it again? Why am I going to compromise my own morality?
Well, it got us nowhere, right? It put us back in the same situation again this time, and all it did was make you feel like shit, and that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like I made the wrong choice, and now I'm paying for it again. We have to take a stand and let them know we're not going to accept that. Which I guess in a way is what Batman's doing, right? Like he's like, I'm not gonna accept this future because he doesn't stay with
true.
Wonder Woman. He decides that he's gonna go out there and he's gonna fight. So I don't know, maybe we were a little bit of both.
Yeah, that's true, and we do see that Batman being this version of Batman being a younger and more idealistic Batman is what separates him from everybody else in the story, and what kind of is his strength. He's a little bit, it seems like he's almost naive.
Definitely does. Like everyone around him has seen so much, and they're all trying to tell him, like, you don't get it, you don't understand. And he just keeps trying to tell them, like, no, you just gotta fight. Like it's just so simple to him.
Yeah, because really the idea of Batman, it is simple, right? It's a little boy who suffered, crime that, depending on which story you're following, was born out of desperation. And instead of growing up and becoming a philanthropist and trying to fix the system within Gotham City, he decides that he's going to dress up in a costume and punch people a lot. And, like as a kid, yeah, that makes sense, but he carries it over into him being an adult. I want to say this is episode 9 of our podcast where I covered this with my friend Antonia, the psychology of Batman. But yeah, this Batman, he does seem to be idealistic. And, we find out in this issue that idealism is a little bit contagious, right?
It definitely is. It's kind of inspirational.
Joker and Batman continue to traverse the landscape, and you find out just how depressing the world is, that all of the Flashes that have existed are just in the Speed Force, uncontrolled, in a storm, destroying everything in their path, and they want help, but Batman can't help them. And if you look into it, it's kind of this beautiful moment too, because Joker's like, yo, get away from that Speed Force storm. It'll either, age you up to dust, or it'll turn you back into into a baby and into cells before you even existed. Like, it just fucks with time and kills you. But then when Batman hears the storm calling out to him saying, help me, he goes toward it, but it leaves before he's able to make it there. Like, he has no way to help them, but that's who Batman is. He runs into the situation when everyone's running away.
And again, you don't see this really from his point of view. It's from, Joker's the one talking about it. We're hearing his voice, and he's talking about how Batman's drawn to the storm, and he knows he can't help, but he wants to. He hears his friends, Barry and Bart and Jay, Wally, all like begging for help, and his first instinct is to jump in and do something, even if he can't.
And as they continue to traverse the land, they see that, the oceans are no longer boiling, but they're still at an unlivable 152 degrees. There was Fort Waller, which was like the last stand where Nuclear Man was supposedly protecting them, but there was a huge, nuclear meltdown. So now people are mutated. We see that both the red and the green. I know the green is Swamp Thing. What's the red? Is that Animal Man?
He is the avatar of the red. So like the red is basically
living creatures.
All organic life on the earth. Yeah.
And the green, which the Swamp Thing is the avatar for the green. Am I right?
Yes, and the green is obviously like plant life. And all things like that. And there's also like a avatar of decay. I forget what they call it, but so there's 3 altogether. But it's mainly the red and the green.
So yeah, we see that even like they both, I think, joined forces, and it still wasn't enough, to save anybody.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's just killing each other, right? So you have like these mutated people and these like Hush people, right? They all have like bandaged faces. I'm not sure what's going on.
They do have bandaged faces. Yeah, I guess you could relate that to Hush, right?
That's
I thought it was
what
like just because they were mutated or something, but they were fighting mutants also. So
yeah,
I don't know.
So I'm not sure either. But they're killing each other, and Batman's like gliding over it.
He's on a hang glider with Joker's head,
and he wants to help, and he's like, "We have to help them."
And Joker says, which side?
Yeah, which side? And Batman's like, all of them, right? Like, he wants to help everybody. He doesn't want to pick a side.
Which is, that made me feel kind of guilty, too, because, like, at this point, if you're a lockdown protester, you're violating orders in place, and I'm not usually the guy who's like, oh, well, you should just follow orders, blah, blah, blah. But like you're bringing your kid to these events in the middle of a pandemic. Like if you get COVID-19, I'm kind of like, oh, well, fuck you. Too bad. But that's not what this Batman would say. He says, help everyone, regardless of what side you're on.
He definitely wouldn't say that. He would want to help each and every person, no matter what, what they said or did.
The Joker comments on how like Batman views everything that's going on in this world now as so unnatural. But Joker says it was the most natural thing in the world. We revealed ourselves.
Oh, that's deep.
It really is. We do have this moment where Alfred, he goes back to this little piece of Gotham and comes into contact with Scarecrow and Bane, who are now under the control of Omega, which we didn't really go into.
Yeah,
I don't
we kind of
really find out about Omega, right?
No, they just say that like after people turned on the villains, things were anarchy, and then Omega came out of nowhere, and he was more brutal and powerful than anyone before. He had the Omega Force, right, or whatever it's called. He killed
The
Darkseid.
anti-life
Yeah,
equation.
the anti-life equation, and he was basically taking over the planet.
And so everyone's following him, and like you said, he's super cruel and gets things done. And Wonder Woman tells Batman, like, kind of starts putting these ideas in his head, like, this is definitely somebody like he's somebody you've trained or somebody you're related to, and it's really fun. It gets the reader thinking, like, oh, who is it? Dick Grayson again? Is it Damian? And Batman is like, is it another version of me? Is it one of the Batman clones?
It's definitely unclear who it is, but it's somebody close to him.
Yes, and this was such an interesting moment, and I'm not going to spoil it until we get to the very end, but this totally makes sense, like when we find out who he is later on.
Definitely.
But Alfred gets hit by Scarecrow's fear toxin, and it turns out that it actually doesn't put him in a place of fear. Omega grabs him, and he says to Alfred, "Don't worry, you convinced the Waynes not to go see Zorro, and you saved everybody. They're all safe." And Alfred's like, as he's dying, he's like, "Oh, I see them. They're all safe." And he drops dead. Like, so the last memory he had was a happy memory, even though he thought it was cool to tell Bruce that he killed his family as a kid.
Yeah. It's also clear that Alfred probably knows who Omega is or has a good idea.
It seems like everybody but Batman does, but like they don't. It's so weird.
Yeah, it is kind of weird. They're like, we know who it is, but you'll figure it out.
Another thing I thought was interesting is that as Joker's explaining all of the different stuff, like he's explaining all the technology that came to Earth in an attempt to help, like from Thanagar, which is Hawkwoman's planet, or Hawkgirl's planet, and Starfire's planet. She's not Thanagarian. What is she? Orange. But basically,
we're comic fans. We're comic fans.
Yeah. Well, you totally know funny books. But there's all this technology that totally went to waste because of humanity, which kind of stands to reason. Like, humans are more powerful than we think.
Yeah.
But also it goes to show that, like, doesn't matter how many advances we've made. Like, we're at our most technologically advanced point in time, and tomorrow we'll be at an even more technologically advanced point, right? But still, we continue to work against our own interests.
Yeah, it seems to be what we do all the time. It just there doesn't seem to be a way around it. I don't know how you ever stop humanity from hurting ourselves and just like uniting to do the right thing.
Do you want to talk about the debate between Lex and Superman?
Yeah, so at this point we wind up in the Fortress of Solitude because I think Batman refuses to believe that Superman's dead. Wonder Woman tells him that he's gone, he died right away too back then, and Batman doesn't believe it because it's Clark Kent. He's the greatest hero of the DC universe. He's the guy that never stops getting back up, and Batman feels if he can find Clark, then they really have a shot. So they go to the fortress. And he gets attacked, I guess, by like some protective. Is it a bomb? What is that? It's like a ship, right? That lands or something like that. I don't know what's going on.
Well, there. Yeah. So we find out that Lex is able to use Brainiac's crown to open portals to other dimensions and times, and he keeps trying to bring Superman back through, but he's trying to make Superman, the baby version, come through in his little ship.
But so Batman doesn't know this yet, right? He one lands right in front of him.
Yeah, all these little like tiny space pods are like, it seems like they're attacking Batman. They're just falling next to him, and he's getting the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, and then who shows up but Clark Kent? He gets rescued by an older Superman with a beard. He looks like he's been through the ringer.
It looks really cool.
He does look really cool. I love that image of him carrying Batman. I was like, oh my god, yes, he's alive. And then you find out he's not. he's like a clone, I guess, right?
Superman had these, I guess you could say, like organic cyborgs that he would use for his own. Like if he needed to prove that he wasn't Clark Kent, and they both of them needed to be in the same place at once. So this thing has like some Kryptonian DNA, but there's really no brain there. He just kind of does whatever he's told.
Yeah. So, Lex Luthor is here, a very sickly looking Lex Luthor, and
Yeah, he's skinny and looks kind of manic.
he's wearing a Superman shirt. He's wearing a Superman shirt, and he's controlling all these Superman cyborgs. And he explains that, to Batman, like you said, he's been using these portals to try to bring Clark Kent as a baby, Superman back to this planet. But every time he does, he's either dead or disintegrated. It never seems to work. And then he explains what happened, and he basically challenged Superman to this moment where they would have a speech, and they would plead to the world their cases about who was right. And he was going to be able to listen to the thoughts of everybody, and depending on who won, the loser would be basically killed, right? Like they would be impaled by these Kryptonian shards, which are the only thing that can kill Superman.
Yeah.
So, Superman gets up there and he gives his speech, and he gives this heroic, inspirational, beautiful speech that's so touching that Lex Luthor is even like kind of shook by it.
What's up, all you cool bats and robins? We're going to put a pin in it right there, so make sure you tune in next week for part 2 of the PolitiPop podcast review of Batman, Last Night on Earth. In the meantime, we're going to be writing out on the following song for part 1, related to the whole post-apocalyptic theme. This song is called If the World Was Ending, and it's by J.P. Sachs featuring Julia Michaels. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what you think of the podcast, feel free to go on to Podbean or iTunes and rate and review us. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod, find us on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast, email us at PolitiPopcast@gmail.com, and as always, you can find our show notes and sources at the PolitiPopPodcast.wordpress.com website. Special thanks to you, the listeners, and to Antonia Little for logo design. We'll see you next time.